This week's episodes were brought to you by the generous support of Eric Sumner. So where are we? We are at the point where we can spawn cities. They've got cool little messages on top of their heads. But what we... Okay, what did I break? What did I break right before the end of when we took a break? Because I've got no nameplates anymore. Oh, okay. I left a comment in. Woo! You can still spawn cities on top of mountains, I think. Yeah, that is likely true. There's nothing in the game stopping us from spawning cities on top of mountains, except for the fact that our units can't walk on top of mountains. But technically, if you had a unit that was allowed to walk on top of a mountain, that was also a city builder, you could build a city on top of a mountain, which, you know, that's a question for, you know, other parts of game design. Whether or not that should be allowed or not. But, alright, so we've got names, and they've got the button code. But nothing happens right now when we click the button. And I think what should happen when we click this is it should select a city and give us some sort of city screen, right? That seems reasonable. I don't know what a city screen should look like. The terrain is randomly generated. That is an excellent question. I currently have it set to a fixed seed so that right now in testing, every time I do it, it randomly generates the same terrain every single time I hit play. But if I remove that, we could actually get it. You guys want to see? Let's go and, where do I do that? Ah, right here. So, uncomment this to generate the same random terrain every time. Makes it easier to test. Right? We could also have some way for you to share your seeds with each other, because that's what it is. This is the seed 0 terrain. But if I uncomment that, and hit say maximize on play, and hit play, we get different landscape. And if I do it again, it's entirely possible, by the way, that we'll start spawned in the water. Like our dwarf could be in the water. Then we get a different landscape. Ooh, lots of islands this time. Oh, that. Little one-tile islands. Let's try another. There we go. See, I knew at some point, because we just plop the unit down in a fixed location and the city down in a fixed location right now for testing. So, like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. But then we get this. This actually, I like how this continent is shaped. So it's not bad. We didn't put that much work into the map generation, and it makes some pretty decent stuff. But for now, I'll go ahead and uncomment that so that we always get the same terrain, and it'll be a little easier to test some things out. So, let's think about our user interface. We click on the city. And I guess, like, we'd almost, like, get rid of the canvas UI, or even get rid of all the UI, like, when you go into city mode. Everything changes, right? Like, it's almost like you turn off all the UI canvases and just keep the one that's left. Is that how we want to do it? Would you keep a top bar? I mean, you could do something like that. You can have some sort of, like, maybe a canvas manager for different modes, right? Tie it into your mouse mode or something like that. So you click on this and, like, everything changes. For now, I think for ease of whatever, I'll just make it so when you click on the city, it'll open up some sort of city canvas on the left-hand side of the screen. And not, you know, necessarily hide everything else. But it's something to consider. Use the same canvas and manage them under that one. And yeah, that's true. It could be the same canvas and then just take everything in the current canvas, lump it under one game object, and then toggle things on and off. So there's different ways of doing that. But for now, what we'll do is we'll have a city selection panel. So I'm going to create an empty. I'll call this, and I mean, that's kind of what we're ending up with here. City selection panel. I should rename this one to unit selection panel. Like that. We're in 2D mode. Excellent. Panel by default takes up the whole screen, which we may or may not want to continue with, but for now it's probably fine. So we'll just set up some sort of I don't know, some sort of silly something or other. We'll use image. We are going to force this to be stretched on the left-hand side. Okay, city selection panel, stretch to full screen. There we go. Image, you are stretched to the left-hand side. Excellent. Of that, I don't know, 300 pixels. It's probably going to look fine once you get into the game. We'll just call it 250 or something like that. That's going to be fine. What the heck? We'll give you the same blue panel background over here. Nah. Can we like desaturate this or make it darker? There we go. Something like that. That's going to be okay. So this is just the background. And then within this, we do, say, maybe another image that is stretched along the top and is 50 pixels high, 30 pixels high, sure, something like that. And inside of that, we have some sort of text string, which is going to take up the whole thing, but then be centered. And this is going to be city name, maybe in a slightly bigger font. City name. You know, and then we're going to have like list of things you can build. I mean, we could have all kinds of stats and whatever. Let's assume there's going to be some sort of stat block. So this is the header. We're going to create another UI image under here. Would this be better? Yeah, let's do a proper resolution independent thing. If this background had a vertical layout group assigned to it, apparently odd things will happen. Why would it scrooch up like that? Anyway, I was going to say this should be a what's the thing I'm looking for? That's got the size element, layout element. Why are you doing such bizarre things? I think because of the order we did things in. Because shouldn't this force child expand width? Why doesn't it do the width expansion automatically? That's weird. Isn't that not weird? Why isn't it forcing the width to be 200? It should be overriding this and not letting me do it, whether I've got a layout element on it or not. Brr? Because what used to be annoying with these is it was hard to override them. Now it's like, force child expand, width, yes. Wow, did that really not work? And then it sets the width to 0. Child control size. No, that's it. I don't want the child control. I don't want the child control the size. I want the grid group to control the size. Unless we override it with this. Like, I don't want this number to be used. Now, it's interesting that it went to child control size. Should it be control child size? Oh, that does over... Okay, this is doing the opposite. Child controls size. Is it just me, or is this worded to be exactly the opposite of what it's doing? Because with this on, it's actually parent controls the width. Yeah, it's inverted. I don't think I'm going crazy with this. But okay. And then, see, here's the annoying thing is... I want to use this height. I guess if you set flexible height to 0, I guess I just factor that in. I don't need a preferred height. I just say, listen, my height is not flexible in any way whatsoever. Ah! Why did it... I did it... But okay. They change things at some point. Here's what I want to do, is I want to have this header to be fixed at 30 pixels high. And I want everything else to scale. Well, no, actually, the stat block, which I'm going to do next, I'm going to set it to fix, say, 200 pixels tall. And then the builder queue, I want it to be flexible. They've changed how this works. They seem to improve some things, but not other. So I don't want you to control the height, because I want the header to control its own height. Except I do want you to control the height. Because as a test, this one should expand. Should I tell you to be... I know, yeah, I can use multiple layout groups, and maybe that's what I need to do. Well, no. That's not what I want to do. I've done this before. Oh, the help for this is even out of date. That's beautiful. Okay. I don't think the layout element gets used at all. All right, let me duplicate this again. Add an actual background. Because what I want to do is say that this one is 200 units tall, but this one I want it to be flexible. So I actually don't want this to be flexible, like 0, although it doesn't pay any attention to this whatsoever. This thing I do want a flexible height. I want this bottom one to stretch to fill all the rest of the available space. Is it because this one doesn't have a sprite? No, it's got the height set. What the fuck is it doing? Why is it like that? All right, none of this is actually required, so that's fine. I'm going to remove the vertical layout group completely. We can do what we want to do with just anchors, but it felt like this would be the better way of doing it. So this is going to be anchored top stretch, and we're going to force it to be... oh, sorry, no. This is going to be left stretch. This is my background, and it's still going to be, say, 250 pixels wide. This header is going to be anchored top stretch, 30 pixels tall. this stat block is also going to be anchored top stretch, but it's going to be offset 30 pixels downwards, like that. And then the final block here is going to be told to stretch on all four corners, but be negative 230 from the top. Or I guess this one wants to be positive 230 from the top. And so now what will happen is this is the behavior that I wanted. I just figured we could do it with a vertical layout group. And all I want to do is say, listen, vertical layout group, all the elements are supposed to stretch, except the first two I want to fix them to 30 pixels tall and 200 pixels tall, and then flow the rest of it. No idea. And I know you could do it, but I know things have changed. And some of the things with the layout groups have changed for the best, because the layout element never quite worked perfectly. You had to do some weird tweaking, you had to force a lot of stuff, but something bizarre has happened, and I'll have to double check the docs on how to do what we want. But there we go. So I mean, you can end up with this. You don't have to use a layout group. I just figured the layout group would be somewhat more logical, and it wouldn't require me to type in these values. Because the problem is now, if I decide, you know what, I need this stat block. So stat block over here is I need it to be a little bigger because we have more stats, or a little smaller. And now if I do this, then I gotta like adjust the number on the second block manually, which I didn't want to have to do. In layout element with flexible height 0, which we did, except it didn't work. Or set a preferred height? Maybe. I guess I didn't set a preferred height. I guess that would be it. Set a preferred height with flexible height 0. Set a preferred height of 30 and flexible 0. And no layout group on the last one. And then let's put in the vertical again. I still say this is inverted. No, see? Because, like, shouldn't this block be 200 pixels tall? This stat block over here, look. It's 0 flexibility, preferred height 200 pixels, and yet it's 337 pixels tall for no reason. And the bottom bit, which has no layout element whatsoever, gets scrooched down. The top bit also gets ignored, right? I want it to be 30, and I'm not flexible. And it's like, nope, fuck it. I don't care. We're nearly there. The top two are fine. It's no longer expanding the bottom one. So if I tell you your layout element, flexible height 1, okay, there we go. Now we finally got it here. So we do have to put a layout element on all of them in this case, and say the bottom one has got a flexible height. There we go. And then I can tell this stat block, oh, listen, we only need you to be 150 pixels tall. Okay, we finally got there. Yay! All right. We end up with the exact same result as before, except now it's really easy for us to just change this number and have everything reflow. Good stuff. So the stat block is going to have things like, I don't know, population and whatever. This is UI, text, stretch all 4 ways, some stat is at, 1 of 8. So it's got some statistics over here in that way. And that's going to be okay. And so this down here is going to be the building stuff, like things to build. Because whatever, it's fine. We could work out queues, we could do whatever. We could have the build queue show up on the side or something like that. Which actually wouldn't be bad, right? So this is the list of things to build. So it's going to be some sort of scrollable list. And then attached to the city selection panel, but not part of the background, we can have another panel. And it can be docked. It's going to be indexed to the bottom left corner here, but it's actually going to be offset to be here. Like this. We might want this to grow, but this is something like currently building. And so this would have something like, I don't know, like the icon for the object. And then it's going to have some text over on the right. Actually, we'll have it, well, I don't know if we have this expand. Yeah, that's fine. Expand along the right, be thinner. So this says something like currently building Petra. Production is, you know, at 10 of 9001. Turns, 99 turns, or, you know, some sort of information of that nature is what we'd be looking for over there. Centered, maybe on the right aligned. Give it a little bit of a, oops, negative margin here. There we go. Something like that. Petra. So that's the current building thing. And if we implement a queue, you could maybe have it right above this. So this shows the things that are going to come after this when it's done. So you build maybe from the bottom up. That kind of makes sense. So the thing at the bottom gets put down there, or something, or you invert it around, or you put the queue somewhere else, or I don't know. Because could you imagine a game without like a functional building queue? That would be terrible and awful. All right, so we got that. So in the things to build, here we're clearly going to want some sort of scrollable list. So we need a empty in here, which is the list. This is going to stretch to all four sides, but it is going to have space on the right for what will be a scroll bar. I suppose I could go and put that in as well. So the scroll bar isn't going to be part of the list because it's not one of the scrollable elements, right? So in here, you're going to have something like, you're going to have something that's probably just some sort of like text thing, you know, some item like that. And this could be, well, probably, it could be a grid. I've used grids for this, and this might actually be the happiest thing. Because you can make a grid that's just vertical. There's nothing that stops you from doing that. But I guess the vertical layout group makes more sense. Again. Although, you know what I like about the grid? Is that you get to specify the size of these items in here, which I think is nice. So you're in here, so you can say that these items are... How big is this? 145 fits... Oh, that's that. Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. Some size. Some size this way. And you can say, oh, we'll make them a little smaller like that. You should be probably middle centered. No, that's dumb. Upper left is good. You can tweak the spacing in between them. So there's the grid size and then there's the spacing, which are two very, very different things. And I don't know, we'll go with this. We'll give you a little bit of padding on the left and the top. There you go. And at the bottom as well, like that. So we have some things, and then you make it scroll rect over here. Rect, not rect. I'm trying to remember. Making this is kind of a little funky because you got to get the viewport to be the right thing and the direction to all be the right thing and whatnot. Let me get to, this is going to be our scroll bar. Scroll bar. So this is going to be stretched to the right-hand side and only about 20 pixels tall. And inside of that, we're going to want some sort of image, which is going to be the actual scrollable component, which again will be about 20 this way. The height will all end up being very flexible here. No, don't be a knob. That looks dumb. Be this UI sprite. There we go. So that's going to be our scroll bar. So then in our list, we want to say vertical scroll bar is... it needs a scroll bar element. That's right. It needs that. and it needs the handle. There we go. So that's the handle. You go from bottom to top. Do I have to like mess with your stretching or something like that? I feel like there's something I need to do to get this to be kind of happy. So then in the actual list, we can now drop the vertical scroll bar in there. Visibility could be on auto hide or whatever. We'll see how it goes. Let me keep duplicating these text elements so that we actually have too many of them. And if we were to hit play right now, I don't think it would work in a way we'd be happy with. No, not yet. The scroll bar does get sized the way that it should be, which is good. Well, no, it has some awareness of things, but it's not quite in there. We have to set... We have to tell it what the viewport is. I think it can be its own viewport, but I'm not 100% sure. No, that doesn't make any sense. Things to build as the viewport. And then do we turn on a mask? Every time I have to do this, I have to relearn how to do the goddamn scroll bars. Every time. Oh, hold on. Put an image in here. To use as that. Or is the mask different? I thought the mask was part of the image. We're a mask. Don't show that. Okay, now things get clipped properly. Well, we'll get there. I'm probably going to stop this now because I'm actually just going to have to double check the docs, but we're 99% of the way there. It's just I have to set the right thing to be the viewport somewhere along the way. And I don't think we have to add any other scroll elements or anything like that. You want to put some sort of drag controls so that you can just drag this up and down. That's another little thingy that you put in. I'd have to check it out and remember how to go. But it's pretty close to that. But I was just trying to get the layout in place here. So we've got this. The some elements aren't clickable right now. So that's probably what we want to do next. So again, the scroll bar is not functional, but that's okay. We want to go and back up the bus on these elements. And we want to make something. So this is like... let's actually make an empty. Put the text inside of that. So this is something like buildable item. So, you know, dwarf warrior. Something like that. Okay, so I think this is really going to be a button. Yeah, this list should probably be set to wider. Let's see. Things to build is 250 wide. Then we're shaving off a few things. 200 wide. There, that's much better. Oh, you probably want a room for an icon too. Here. We're going crazy with these groups. We're going to do that, and we're going to add a image over here. This image is going to be, I don't know, 32 by 32. So we might want to make that element that high. No, let's say, I don't know, 24 by 24. That should be plenty good for an icon, right? I don't know, maybe. Let's invert these two. And oops. There we go. Something kind of like that. But the important thing is that this is going to be some sort of button so that you can click on this in the list in some fashion and then build it. Oh, first of all, I missed a tip a little earlier from Drawgrist. Thank you very much, Drawgrist. Yesterday, Google now notified me that Air United is playing. I guess I've watched too many of your Football Manager videos, and now Google thinks I follow the team. Thanks for the great videos. Yeah, a lot of people get this. It's surprising how many people now get alerts on their cell phone when real-life Air United is playing, which is kind of awesome. A little weird. First of all, like Google, you're creepy. But it's kind of awesome at the same time that, like, that's just something that has developed now because people were watching so many videos, which makes sense. I mean, Google has, you know, YouTube, so Google knows, hey, you like things about Air United, so we will tell you things about Air United, because why not? I'm getting that not just for Air. What, you get, like, a bunch of Scottish football updates? That wouldn't surprise me either. Friendly Google is creepy. I remember the first time, I was doing a trip, and my phone let me know about my, like my plane information, my flight information. It was like, because something had emailed me, like, it wasn't even a trip I booked myself. It was like one of the Paradox events, right? But Paradox had emailed me with my flight information, and because it was in my email, Gmail parsed my flight information, and my phone let me know about my flight info and where the weather was going to be in Stockholm. Like, it was all updated. It was like very handy, but also a little creepy. I don't know. We got a question. I'm working on a Unity 2D project in Unity, playing with colors and lights, and just adding one spotlight in the scene drops my FPS from 50 to about 30. Do you have any idea how to optimize that? That's a really interesting question with the lighting in a 2D scene in particular, and I don't know what to suggest necessarily for that. There's a lot of things that can speed up or slow down lighting, especially if, depending on how large of an area you're lighting, how many things are being lit, you know, distance culling and things are the thing. The other thing you might want to check is the difference, if there's a difference between, like, forward rendering and deferred lighting, which has different optimizations. I don't have any, like, hard tips for you, like, just, it's going to depend very much on what your scene is. Like, there might be, you could check to see if you've got global illumination turned on. So go into your lighting and your settings over here. Some of the, like, global illumination isn't necessarily what you want or don't want, and that can really slow down a lot of your render times. There might be stuff that you can bake. Marking things that don't move to be static can make a big difference, because then the lighting for those things gets pre-calculated as much as possible. So there's certain things you can do for that. Anywho, so yeah, we have our really sort of shitty city interface here. So we want to make sure that this thing pops up when something gets selected. So for that, again, right now, let me close a bunch of these. Keep open mouse controller because I want that. So just like with the unit selection, we'll have the mouse thing toggle the panel on and off, which may or may not be what we want later on. Actually, I'm going to suggest the mouse controller almost doesn't need to know. Because the city name tag is the thing you're going to click on to open up the city selection screen. So the name tag could be responsible for doing it, but we do need the mouse controller to know, because we want the inputs from the mouse. Like, we don't want to be dragging the mouse around, or the map around in that mode. We don't want to be able to necessarily select a unit, or maybe we do, maybe we don't, I don't know. It's possibly reasonable for the mouse controller to be aware and just have a public void select city like this. And for this to, when a city is selected, we cancel any current update function. And then we set the current update function to be, I don't know, some sort of city update function, like void update city view, because we might still want to do this thing like, can you still click on a unit you see during city view? And, you know, that would exit city view and just go directly into city selection. So what we might want to do, weirdly enough, is we still, inside of the city view, we might want to still call it something like update detect mode start. Because why not? Like, effectively, it's sort of doing nothing, but we might override it in a more sophisticated way later on. Does cancel update function, I don't believe it clears our unit selection. I think we've explicitly had cleared that out at some point. So when you select a city, we will set our selected unit to be false, but I guess we're going to set a selected city. Selected city equals null. Selected city. Oh, and these are cities. City selection panel is equal to, is active if our selected city is not null. Which is public. Do we want to be able to set selected city equals city and then have it do things? And it could have side effects and things, but I guess that might be okay. I mean, it already has side effects. It's going to update the city selection panel and stuff. Yeah, I guess that's fine. So and then I guess here, selected city equals null. So we cancel out any selected city. We'll do that first because they'll probably do some cleanup stuff and we don't want to override it twice. So then the idea is our little city nameplate so there's a map object nameplate, sort of generic script, and we're going to have a sub one for city nameplate. Oh, not city nameplate controller. No, don't autocomplete for me. Just city nameplate, thank you. All it's going to have, this could be called city nameplate button or something like that. That might have been better. But I was going to say, all it's going to do, this could really implement like on-click and everything. That might be the best way to doing this. A little bit cleaner. .ui, not AI. It's going to implement I don't think it's UI. I think it's actually .event system. I pointer click handler. There we go. And implement that. Hit that. Thank you. So when you have been clicked, you're just going to do game object dot find object of type mouse controller. Oh, it needs to know what city it's attached to. Because we just want to set selected city to be something. But we need to know what that something is. Well, that's okay, because what we can do, map object nameplate, MONP is equal to get component, map object game nameplate. This is attached to a game object, which we can look up. So we can ask for the Hex Map, and it has a map of cities, which is not public. Oh, you're not. You're going to be annoying like that? So we can go from the game object to the actual city, but we don't have anything to like let us access that, because this dictionary here. We want to do something like public city get city from game object, which we actually have to run backwards for. This is a dictionary that goes from city to game object, but not the other way around. Okay, then never mind. City nameplate, public city, my city. Boom. And that just means when Hex Map creates a city, spawns a city, spawn city at, one of the things it's going to do, say game object dot get component city nameplate dot my city is equal to city. Done. There we go. So now I can do that. And the next thing I got to change is right now that script is on the base object. I've got to remove it from that, I believe, and put it on the thing with the actual image. Now you'll notice this button script, the on-click has nothing in it. We're not sending a signal to anything specifically because we're implementing iPointer click handler over here. It's going to do that without us having to do all the linking stuff, which is probably fine. So, mouse controller, you need a link to the city selection panel. So if we take this and we hide it and then we hit play, we get a null exception here. Right, hold on. It's not the city game object that has a city nameplate. It is the city nameplate controller. That's why I was getting slightly confused. That has that. Managers make a single UI controller, make a script called the voids needed. It can be, depends. Are we still getting one of those? Get component in children. Because it's not on the base object. So, no errors. If I click on this. Stack Overflow. Well, that's an interesting one. So mouse controller Right. Is stuck in an infinite loop. Yeah. Because what's happening is selected city is setting selected unit to null, which causes this to run, which causes selected city to go to null, which causes this to run, which causes selected unit to go to null, and so on and so forth. I still like the idea of cleaning up. That's the problem. Like, I always say, oh man, if you're gonna do frickin' properties like this, don't do side effects in your properties. And I'm doing side effects in my properties, and that's very bad. There's going to be 2 steps. This is such a stupid, shitty way to do this. Don't do this. Set ourselves to null temporarily so that we don't loop. I have to clean that up. I should probably just use setters and getters like instead of a property. But hey! Select a unit, select a city. Everything works! I'm not proud of the implementation. I mean, it's fine. Either way, it's only going to be 1 line. It just doesn't feel like it should be there. It's working well, but it doesn't feel like it should be there. You know? Either way, it's going to be exactly sort of-ish the same code. It just feels like this property is doing too much, and it makes me feel very, very, very uneasy. But it ain't wrong. It's mostly just the question of like style and organization, and then not screwing yourselves up later. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, so that feels quite good. So let's have it so that when you click on the Dwarf Warrior button over here, it just instantly builds a Dwarf Warrior. I mean, really should add it to a queue and whatever. And yes, exactly what 99 stars says, and exactly what I keep saying, and yet I'm doing it anyway. It's it's interesting. This name tag is doing the right thing by being behind the main overlay, but I didn't actually expect it to do the right thing. Why is that? Because we never set a sort order for this. And I would have thought that the thing lower down would get drawn last, so it would be on top. Right? This canvas here is responsible for that nameplate. Okay, now it's above. Okay. Good. It's wrong in a way I expect. And I'm much more comfortable with. There we go. So what we're going to do is explicitly on the map object UI is we're going to give it a negative sort order so that we force it to be behind things. It was just coincidental that that was behind this because it could have very, very easily ended up in front of it. But now it's always going to be behind the true UI sort of elements that are in front of things. Do you save all the hex tiles in a big array? Yes, we do. Yes. Yeah, in the hex map, it's got it has a list of all the hexes somewhere in here. I'm pretty sure. Probably somewhere. Right here. There you go. 2-dimensional array. Civ 7 devs taking notes. Yeah. Okay, so in our city. So I guess what we're going to do is we'll have some sort of like is building. Now the problem is buildings that you can add to a city. Like a city can build buildings or it can build units. I mean, wonders are really just sort of special cases of buildings in a sense. The difference is when you complete a unit, you spawn a unit. When you complete a building, stats change in the city in some way. So what I'd be nice is some sort of like, you know, unit being built, right? But then you'd also need a building, which we don't have that class of, building being built, okay? And then we need some sort of Boolean building unit or building to see which one, or you just check to see if one's null or whatever. And then, you know, some sort of other thing like total hammers needed, etc., etc. I think the thing that makes the most sense is to create some sort of class, something called like building job. And this thing is going to have some sort of, it probably needs like hammers. And we can probably, this is going to be a simple enough thing. Again, we'll start with public. We can always make them properties later on with the protected setter if need be. So this is going to be, we might even want to use floats because there might be like weird floating point stuff and things, because why not, right? So total production needed, public float, production done. Production done. And then what I think we're going to have is some sort of delegate, like probably just like an anonymous action, but we'll go ahead and we'll like make it a public delegate, returns void, and this is something like on production complete. And it should probably be past the the city that building, you know, the, I don't know, building city or whatever, like the city that's building whatever it is. On production complete blank. And then we can pass it some sort of function. What's great about this is we can make it like just an on-fly anonymous kind of thing. So for example, you can have some sort of dummy function over here. So, building job. So void example. Building job equal, building job lowercase equals new building job dot, you know, total production needed equals 100 hammers, and then building job dot that is not public, I guess. Oh, we have a delegate, but not the actual. This should actually be called the production complete delegate, like that. And then we should have one like this. So building job dot on production complete is going to be, we can just make a completely on the fly function that gets called with some city. And so we do something like we can get a copy of the hex map. Do we get a copy of the map? City dot hex map dot spawn unit at blah 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 blah. So when it's done, we spawn the unit, you know, some unit, new unit, with some prefab, new game object, just to make this compile, at city.hex.q and city.hex.r. And close that. There we go. So when the job gets complete, it runs this code, which involves doing this. And so again, you know, we can, that's probably something like that. That way the city doesn't have to have any idea of what the job is. Like, it doesn't need to know if it's a city, a wonder, a unit, even a project, right? Which could be either a Civ 5 style project, which runs infinitely, you know, like just production to money, production to science, or a Civ 6 style project, which does end at some point. To store the result of the function while you use delegate. Well, delegate just describes a signature for a function. So it's just saying the on production complete which is not, I mean, it could be described as an event as well. There's no, I could, like, there might not be any reason to do one versus the other, in which case, instead of an equal, we just plus equal this. But again, it's just setting up a signature, right? We're just saying, like, whatever function you feed into here just has to match, it just has to accept a city. We're going to require that it accepts a city to fit the signature. That's it. So, yeah, something like that. And then our little city overview panel, the little flyout that shows you what you're currently working on, will just read the building job information and display that. There could be a variety of like little helpers in here to help that along as well. But yeah. So we could have something like public image, because it's going to be part of the UI. So using Unity engine.ui, so it's got access to the image class. So this is something like the building, and this is not necessarily like a building as in a structure. This is just like the building job icon, I guess I'll call it that. And public string building job name, right? So that's where you know, example Petra. Example image for the Petra, like that, or whatever. So we can feed it in. Again, building job has no idea really what's being built. It just has some information. It knows how much production you need and how much production has been done. And it can keep track as a placeholder for us, keep track of the appropriate icon and name for this job to display. And then all it knows is that when the production done reaches this, we're going to call this delegate over here, this event over here is going to get triggered, and something will happen. That's it. It's completely agnostic about anything else, which is good. And then lets you make these sort of dynamic things on the fly. Oh. Is this just practice? No, this is part of our, if you don't know, I have a second YouTube channel, youtube.com/Quill18creates, where I do game programming tutorials, and it's funded by Patreon, actually. So, and as part of that, we do a stream, well, I mean, we do a couple of videos a week normally, and we do a stream once a month. Because August has been crazy, we haven't done as many videos as normal, so we're doing an extra long stream. Normally we do a stream that's about an hour long, sometimes 2, depending on how the funding levels go. But I'm going to be doing this the entire stream so far. Although, I'm really starting to flag here. Programming and talking about it is surprisingly exhausting. Mostly the talking about it. Trying to explain it properly. Should building job be an interface? Would you extend it via reference for like cities, units? I don't think it needs to be. I don't think building job will need to be extended for the different types of jobs. Because I don't think that the jobs differ. Other than perhaps one of the things to check would be what happens in a situation where you have plus 15 production to units, right? And then how do you factor that in here? Although that could be calculated like differently or something, I don't know. But yeah, there is a bit of a question there. Although again, what you could have is some sort of delegate for like so public delegate, which returns a float, which is the production bonus delegate. And so, and again, it's got some sort of public. This would definitely not be an event, though. Production bonus func. Right, so then you have something like this. So you have, then you'll have your public function, do work. And then we'll have a float, which is the raw production. And then you do something like if production bonus func is not equal to null, then what we do is raw production gets multiplied by the production bonus func, like that. So what you do is when you're creating the job and it's a unit, you pass it the function that correctly calculates your production bonus for units. And that's it. And you just like, and then so every time we do work, we call that function, and that function checks, you know, all your civics or whatever it is and says, ah, Right now, your production value should be 1.25, i.e. you get a 25% bonus to producing units. So this just returns 1.25 at that time, and we'll multiply our result by that. And then we say production done plus equals raw production. And if production done is greater than or equal to total production needed, then what we do is we run the on production complete, which should never be null, and we could probably do a check. Most likely what we need is we wouldn't have a generic constructor like that. We would in fact have a constructor that would require these values, right? So you require an icon, you require a name, although you could pass null to those, is probably okay, not the end of the world. Total production needed, like this. You might want to do, actually we need, types, like that. Float total production needed. We might want to have a value for like overflow. Float overflowed production from the previous job. The on production complete delegate. And the bonus func, which again could be null, and that would be okay. Although if on production complete is equal to null, then that would be a very bad thing. Throw new exception, like what the heck? Because that's clearly double plus on good. Don't pass a null for that. So we could do something like that. So that calculates in here. It does that. Clearly, we'll need some way to do report overflow. So production done is equal to the overflowed production from before. So I mean, we're not setting this right now, although I guess we should. So this dot is equal to that. This dot is equal to that. This dot is equal to that. So the overflow production is taken care of. This dot is equal to that. And this dot is equal to that. There we go. So there, to define a building job, you need to supply all these things. Although again, some of them you could probably just pass a null, and that's fine. So there's the do work, and it calls that when it's done. Part of that doneness should probably involve like removing itself from the work queue in some fashion, but that's a problem for something else. Psycho, yeah, I played Aven Colony on stream last week, didn't I? Or the week before. Maybe the week before, I'm not sure. But yeah, played it. It's good. It's fine. Production complete delegate does not take 0 arguments. That is true. You know what? I do want to take no arguments, because this will probably be created by a city. So so we can just say, instead of city, just this. And because of closure, that'll all work okay. Mumpt is assigned a value but never used. That is correct, because is it? Map object nameplate. What do we want to set for this? I guess everything is... I don't remember what I was grabbing a reference to this for. I guess nothing. because we are working. Let's see. Building job does not contain a constructor that takes 0 elements. That is correct. Because now we have to pass this stuff. So null icon, Petra for the name. Production needed is 100, no overflow. The script, the function that's going to run when we complete it is this, and null function for determining the cost. Oops. There we go. So this is our building job. It's got no icon. The name is Petra. It needs 100 hammers. It's got no hammers in the queue. When it's done, we run this, which actually this is the dwarf warrior job, not Petra. When it's done, we run this, and then we do no. And so what we're going to do is we'll also have a public do turn. This is what processes the turn. Like, you know, when you hit end turn. And so if building job not equal to null, then building job dot do work gets run. And our production is going to be over 9,000 is how much work we're going to produce. Because we don't actually have something for, like, float. Production per turn, 9,001. There we go. Some sort of value like that. So we're going to do the work. So as soon as we run do turn on the city, it will complete the job. So over in our hex map, where we have a end turn function over here, we loop through all the units. Again, this logic has to be a little bit more. There has to be more that goes on in here. Actually, I don't know if we call end turn, because we have the button, but I'm not sure it's wired. Because I don't think we refresh the movement. I'm betting that next turn button is not actually wired to our little thingy. Yeah, it is not. Okay, well that's going to take 2 seconds to do. Our bouton over here needs to tell our hex map that the end turn button has been clicked. So now, if and we do that, so dwarf is at 0 of 2, we're going to hit this. We get the progress, he goes to 2 of 2. He doesn't continue his movement right now because we don't have all that logic put in, but we do get turn progression, which is going to be good enough. And then we have, if we get to this point, no units are waiting for orders, so process cities, and then go to next turn. So for each, and we do have to change it so that like we can have multiple different types of players, but for now, for each city, C in cities, C.doTurn. And in our city, what we're going to do is when we create our city, I'm going to run example right away. So this will automatically, when we're creating a new city, it'll automatically add a build dwarf job to the queue. As soon as we hit end turn, it should do all of the work. I'm thinking do work should return something. Maybe, you know what? We'll return production done minus that. Otherwise, it'll return how much work is left. Actually, it'll always return the same thing. It'll always return production needed minus production done. Does the work. Returns number of hammers remaining, or negative if complete / overflow. So in here, float work left. If work left is less than or equal to 0, job is complete. So building job gets set to null. To do save overflow for later, right? So if we overkill the job, we save the overflow and put it into the next job right away, which will factor into whether we have a queue or not. Even if we don't have a queue, you still save the overflow, so we can figure that out going forward. But if I has done that vaguely correctly, I'm going to hit this. Our city should have automatically given itself a job to build a dwarf. When I hit next turn, 9001 production should go towards the dwarf. And we get an error. Okay, that's fine. Right. Couple of things. We're still just building a dummy object over here instead of a correct type of object. This .hex map dwarf prefab. There we go. It wasn't generating the right kind of prefab here. Well, it wasn't generating any prefab. Next turn, we get a dwarf! Yes! We can take you. We can move you. I can't move you. Ah, there we go. I just wasn't clicking correctly. So you've been moved over here. If I hit next turn again, I will not get another dwarf because it didn't have another job. Beautiful. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to change things so that we don't just set up a dummy job over here, but instead we set up a job when we click on the dwarf. It should spawn a message. What should spawn a message? I agree. Maybe we should have a turn manager to handle the turns instead of the map. And I actually very much agree with you that that is probably exactly what's going to happen. That is probably exactly what is and should happen. I like it. Now, part of the reason this was put in here is because the map owns the units. But, and I think that's okay for the map to own the units. But I think that this end turn function is actually very, very important and probably should indeed be moved to a separate script. So let's do that. We're going to make a new C# script called turn controller. And it's mostly just going to do a bunch of things with the map, but that's okay. And you just know that all your turn logic is somewhere nice and safe. I'll make an empty here. Turn controller. I mean, it doesn't even have to be a game object, really, but I don't know, it'll be handy. To do that, you're going to go there. And we need to actually open you. Game object dot find object of type hex map. So you just find one in the game. You don't do anything on an update other than void end turn. I'm actually going to call this the end turn button because it doesn't literally end the turn. It may not end the turn because some units might have some work to do. So I'm going to take all this, cut it out, paste it here, then take this function get rid of it completely. And over here, right, the one downside to this is we don't have this. We do have the ability to get the list of units, don't we? Does not. I guess it doesn't right now, but we could as an array. And what I like is I actually do like the idea that we're going to be iterating over a copy of the array, because it's possible in processing the turn, if the unit's part of their movement involves attacking each other, somewhere along the way they could hurt each other and kill each other, and that would change the list of units. But if we've already got a copy of it, we can iterate through. I mean, we just check to see if it's already dead or whatever, because you can't modify an array while you're iterating over it. So, but we're going to be iterating over an array, a copy of that. So that's going to be fine. Public unit units get return units dot to array. I guess we need the link reference over here using system.link. Now this is going to cause copies. This is going to cause copies to occur. Well, I think that's okay. Can I not to array? Burr? Oh, whoops. But we can worry about optimizing this in some fashion later on. It's going to be okay. So same thing. Public city array cities get return cities.to array. We can worry about the optimizing. Optimizing? Shut up. It's totally, perfectly cromulent English. So now you can go hexmap.units. And we probably, in fact, we're probably going to iterate over this more than once. So in fact, we probably want to do something like unit array units is equal to, whoops, is equal to that. City array cities is equal to hexmap.cities, like this, and like that. And then we can tell our end turn button that instead it's going to be pointing to our turn controller and then calling its non-public I'm optimizing. That's right. End turn button over here. So there we go. We're back at where we were before, but now we've got things spread out a little bit. Because yeah, the hex map code does way too much as is. I mean, that doesn't make any difference for performance. In fact, we have slightly more overhead by having a separate object and a separate class, but not much more. And it keeps the files much more focused on whatever the hell they're supposed to be doing instead. So the next thing I'm going to do is have this sort of create the job. But we still don't have this sort of templating engine right now, so because that's really what I want, is I'm going to want some sort of thing that is the list of all the buildable units and buildings in some sort of list, which is used to create that list of stuff, ideally categorized based on units versus buildings versus wonders versus projects, or however we want to organize that. We want to pull from a list, and then so that when we click something to queue up the job, it's going to be that sort of template mechanic that's going to be responsible for creating this new building job instead of this example function. I think we might be hitting my limit of brain for today. I strongly suspect. But I feel like we've done a lot today. We've done a lot in 3.5 hours, I would say. I mean, we've got a really shitty looking city overlay. Let's get it full screen here. Make sure everything still scales properly. But, you know, we've got our dwarf that can come over here. He can plop down a city. Then he'll move over here. And then if we go next turn, each city will create a new dwarf, which can then go and plop down more cities. Oh my god, it's like a virus. Oh, right, never mind. These dwarfs cannot because they're the default ones. It's only this one here that's enabled to, like, spam out cities non-stop. But he can still multiply like crazy. Next turn, get up on the hill. We still have, like, the next turn, like, you know, do everything. We've also got to get some sort of, like, terrain height code put in here for our movement, so for our cities and our dwarves. So there needs to be some sort of value in here that says, oh, when you're on this type of tile, offset it by a certain amount or something like that. But yeah, infinite city sprawl code. Click on this, get our crappy UI, but it does, you know, at least orientate itself properly the way we want. This is not Unity's built-in pathfinding. This we went ahead and did our own here. And we wanted to be able to, we have kind of like funky requirements for a couple of our pathfinding. We did make it generic, and we almost certainly could have just used Unity's perfectly fine by feeding its graph, but you know, every opportunity to learn is great, so we just went ahead and wrote our own over here. It's not very hard. Actually, we mostly copied our existing pathfinding code and just tweaked it to be a little bit more generic. Mostly because we need sort of an odd calculation in terms of distance, because there's this weird thing that happens where the movement cost to move into a tile is not as clear as it could be, because like the flat ground all has a movement cost of 1 and the hills all have a movement cost of 2, but the effective movement cost of 2, the effective movement cost of entering a hill might be 2, but it also could be 1 or 3. And the reason for that is, it depends on whether we're using Civ 5 style movement rules or Civ 6 style movement rules. I.e., in Civ 5, if you're here and you have one of 2 moves, let's say you started your turn here, you move here, so you've used one of your moves, now you have 1 left of a max of 2. In Civ 5, you can still climb on top of this hill. So even though this hill has a movement cost of 2, in terms of the Civ 5 movement, in that particular situation, it's effectively only costing you 1. Whereas, if this were Civ 6 style movement, in Civ 6, you're not allowed to move on top of the hill if you don't have enough to move this turn, unless you're at max. Like, if this hill has a movement cost of 1,000,000, but you're sitting at 2 of 2 movement, so you have that, you're at your cap, even though you don't actually have 1,000,000 movement available to you. If you're at your limit, you're allowed to always go up. But it means that if you move from here to here, so you have 1 move left, you're not allowed to go onto this hill. You have to wait until next turn to do it, which means in total it costs you 3 total moves. So we have a really funky sort of weird movement cost that is based on like the history of all the moves that have been accumulated to then. And we could probably do it with the Unity system, but we just sort of wrote our own little thing for accumulated movement cost that sort of recalculates on the fly. Who just sent in a tip there. Did I actually forget to read Snoopy's thing? Did I just start to read? I did. I got distracted from reading Draugust's comment earlier, and I never got around to reading Snoopy's message, and I'm terribly sorry, Snoopy, because you're such a great supporter of the channel, and thank you very much. Snoopy says, this is the first programming stream I've made it for. Really? Wow. Because, yeah, Snoopy supports the programming YouTube channel quite extensively, so thank you very much. Pretty interesting stuff. Definitely neat change of pace. Yeah, there's something very different between the YouTube tutorials and the stream tutorials. But they both have a lot of value, I think. And Deadmate just sent in a tip there. Hey, Quill, thought I'd provide some whiskey so you can have more brain limits. No, wait, higher brain limits. Something. Thanks for the useful stuff, as usual. There's a great XKCD comic about the about alcohol and programming, and something called the Balmer curve. That's always funny to check out. But generally speaking, the two do not work out. Yeah, so Snoopy has tipped before on stream and always supports the programming YouTube channel, but yeah, apparently it's the first time you've actually made it for the programming stream. Even let him dare? That would be like astounding. Yeah, the Balmer Peak, that's what it is. I like the Civ 5e type of movement where it counts the move cost in hindsight. It is an A-star algorithm. Yes, we did use A-star. A-star is very simple to implement and perfectly quick when you're not talking about a map that changes dynamically. And the Civ map does not change dynamically. It changes very rarely, and you can get units in a way, but that's more of a unit avoidance than anything like that. If you were going to do something like City Skylines, then you would probably use something like a D-star light algorithm, which is a fair bit more complex to implement, but handles a map that changes better. Like you remove one street, or you turn one street into a one-way, and you don't want to have to recalculate all the pathfinding for everyone from scratch. You just want to see if you can update the graph just based on that change, and that's what D-star light is good at. But it's a lot more work to implement and not faster in general if you're not dealing with a map that changes pretty frequently. So, yeah, both Civ 5 and Civ 6, it's going from 5 to 6 was a big. It really takes a lot of like rewriting your brain AI for movement, because it's very easy to find yourself with like, you move a lot less. Like, movement is a lot more expensive in Civ 6. I mean, in the worst example, movement in Civ 6 is 3 times as expensive, right? Because you're going from an effective movement cost of 1 to an effective movement cost of 3. I think, generally speaking, in practice, you're probably looking at something that's going to be 25 to 50% more expensive to move across the map in general in Civ 6, which is quite a bit, and has big combat implications. That and the fact that promotions ends your turn. Those were big things to have to like rewire your personal AI to accommodate. It was just crazy. You will eventually add roads, though, and that will require recalculating paths. I mean, sort of, but not really. I mean, some of the weights of the things do change, but an individual pathfinding job is really trivial. Like, it's not a real-time game, and there's not thousands of units moving across the map. It's just a few units moving across the map. And so the recalculation works a little bit differently. And anyway, so you might win a little bit with a dynamic thing, but in practice, I don't think much. So. Would it be hard to implement hexes of different altitude in this engine? Oh, like actual sloping terrain. What you would do, so the difference is, from the logic of the gameplay, no. The hex altitude wouldn't make a difference. What you'd want to do is exactly the same sort of code type of stuff that you would need to do to blend your hexes. Because right now, each one of these is a discrete game object with a specific pre-rendered model. Instead, the model for each of your hexes you would probably generate on the fly, which is not difficult to do. You can modify the vertices of any of these hexes dynamically, and you can do things like, you know, blend the hills together so that you've got like nice contiguous terrain between the two sides. Same thing if you've got any mountain ranges, because right now, okay, I don't have any. Oh, like here, right? These two mountains here, they're just two mountain tiles, but we could go and tweak the vertices between them to like get it nice and level, which Civ 6 does quite nicely, for example, on individual hills. And you could factor in height as well, and literally like just make the vertices grow and figure out what the height difference is between this hex and that hex, and get everything to work. You could absolutely do it. It's just a cosmetic thing. It's just a feature of the thing responsible for showing the graphics. Right now, we just show the graphics by generating a prefab, but like, so our code, what's it called? I guess it's just like hex component. Like this is the only code that's attached to a hex, but this hex component could do a lot more. You could have a start on here that says, okay, let's go and make massive changes to our mesh based on our elevation and the elevation of our neighbors. That's it. And it wouldn't affect any of your game logic whatsoever. Although you could have it so that the hex component here, where it's got its movement cost, you could have your movement cost function, which actually we do have a dynamic function for that. I thought. Oh, yeah, the sort of base movement cost here, where you get some variables, which again, we could change to flags, or we could move some of this over to unit or vice versa. But in here, you could have something else, which is, well, if you're moving from tile A to tile B, what's the relative height difference? And you can have a dynamic movement cost based on that. For example, moving from a hill to another hill of the same height, maybe the movement cost there should be 1. Perfectly valid. So, I mean, it depends whether you want the changes to be cosmetic or in-game, or, I mean, you could have them be cosmetic most of the time, but like a good example of that would be Alpha Centauri. Alpha Centauri had actual heights. It didn't affect, like, it was cosmetic in terms of moving around the map. There was no movement penalty to going uphill versus downhill or anything like that. But it did matter. So the elevation and moisture here, which we do track in this, mostly determine whether it should be a desert or plains or a grassland or whatever, and whether we should render it as a mountain or as a flat terrain. But in Alpha Centauri, you would use these also as thresholds for when you build farms. If you built farm on low moisture places, they wouldn't give you much food, but high moisture places would, and elevation was really good for solar panels, for example. So, I mean, you can factor that in, but we don't actually, in here, very similarly to your typical Civ game, we don't actually use the elevation directly for actual altitude. But what we will do is when we generate our hex component over here, we will probably want some sort of like, some sort of public float, which should be something like vertical offset. So something like map objects on this hex should be rendered, you know, higher than usual, right? So if you're sitting on top of a hill, you should be, you know, 0.25 world units higher or something like that. We're gonna have to sort out some sort of system for that. But that, again, wouldn't be difficult because the Hex Map update visuals over here, when it's running through and it's saying, this is actually, shit, we could do that now. If you're on a hill, hex component. So I don't know what the right numbers will be, and obviously hard coding in this stuff is weird, but vertical offset equals, I don't know, something like that. We'll guess. And then our unit view will move I guess we'd need to figure out somewhere here to do new positions Y component needs to be set from hex components vertical offset. And again, we probably need a system to go from a hex to a game object, which we do have that. Because our dictionary, no, goes from game out. Oh, no, we do have the dual dictionary for the hexes. That's right. Do we have, like, get hex from blah? Get hex from game object. Yes, we do. No, it's the other way around. Get game object from hex. Get hex game object. Okay, I'm inconsistent with my naming, and therefore I should be flogged. Hex component HC is equal to new hex dot hex map dot get hex game object from new hex. This feels like I should have a slightly better way of doing this, but that's okay. Dot get component hex component dot vertical offset. I mean, we'd have to have a lot of faith in this to work, but new position dot Y plus equals it's a lot of faith that, like, that whole connection will work, but all right, no errors. So if we try to get you up onto a hill, oh my god, we almost, that actually kind of guessed right with the offset. Oh, like 1 foot's just slightly... That's pretty goddamn perfect. I just kind of guessed that 0.25 would be correct. But there we go. So, if I tell you to walk down... Oh, you maybe sink down a little faster than need be. We'll figure something out. This actually might be a better example. Instead of having it hard code to a height, we actually might want to do this with a raycast. Oh, hold on. That's what's going on. Is it's setting the old hex. So, I can't write the Y directly. Vector 3 old position is equal to this. Is equal to old position. That's why it's dipping down a little bit oddly. So old position dot Y plus equals. Yeah, there'll be a cleaner way to do this later, but old positions were offset. Yeah, so we might want to do like a vertical raycast as we go, and then it'll actually like sort of follow the contours of the terrain. But this should work slightly better. So next turn, get up there. Excellent. There you go. So yeah, it just goes in a straight line from one to the other, so it does look a little like floaty. So we probably would want to make a raycast to follow the terrain, which would be better. We probably just ignore, like, we may not even need our hex component to have a vertical offset instead. That probably makes a lot more sense to do. Get rid of vertical offset and instead use a raycast to determine correct height on each frame. Okay. But that'll be something for another time. We're definitely going to be make wrapping up the stream because I apparently can't even talk anymore, so that's going to be okay. So far there's been 24 parts, 30 minutes each, plus this 4-hour stream. So yeah, that's how long it took us to do this with full tutorial mode. That's not bad. So about 16 hours so far, despite explanations. And we got a fair amount done. I mean, next step would be, we still have to make the next turn sort of process like pending moves better. Because like if I hit next turn now, like his movement keeps getting reset. Like his movement remaining gets reset, so I can queue up more moves again. But he doesn't actually like go through his queue like the way that we would want. And that's really easy for us to finish up. Right now it's not a bug, it's just a to-do that hasn't been finished. So we can resolve that, work out then separate units out by type, work out some combat, and probably never ever touch AI because I could not imagine making an AI for a game like this. I gotta say though, now they got like I hid the debug information on the tiles that were like reporting the hex numbers and things like that. The game, I gotta say, this visual style, it ain't bad, is it? No, we don't have it changed yet for the city on the hill, because it'll be the same thing. I don't know, maybe I'll use the vertical offset for that, but I think the raycast is actually what we're gonna want to do for the cities as well. So when a unit gets placed, we'll do that. This guy looks like he's like an anonymous witness. You know, he's got like his eyes are being covered up by something. Like, to protect his anonymousness. Except his name is just going to be Urist, because, like, all dwarfs are called Urist. That's good. So, next thing we're going to do is, I don't know. I am gone, in fact, on Monday. So, tomorrow I'm still here, although there's no Sunday Morning Heroes. And then Monday, I'm flying to Germany for Gamescom. We are on Thursday evening in Cologne. If you're anywhere near Germania there, Thursday evening So August 24th, I will be organizing a fan meet. Stay tuned for more specific information there. I don't know what days games, or what time Gamescom runs, like what the hours are. For the main stuff. Okay, apparently this website has audio right away. That's always nice. Like, what are the hours? Hall plan, dates, and opening hours. Oh, it runs to 8 p.m. That's pretty late, because I have a very early flight the next day. So it'll be something like 7 p.m. or 8 p.m., but I can't go all night because I got a flight extremely early in the morning, and I'm gonna have to take a train out to like Dusseldorf or something to get it there. So I can't go all night, but we're gonna do some sort of fan meet up there. Stay tuned for more specific information, and certainly if you're going to Gamescom, I will try to coordinate a time. Like we'll all meet at the Paradox booth or something at noon or some damn thing like that. So that'll be good if you're at actual Gamescom. So we'll see how it goes. Just don't sleep. Can you stay overnight? Stay overnight. Where? What do you mean? I don't know what you mean. Essentially carry you to the train. Oh, going all night and sleeping on the plane. I can't sleep on planes. I keep trying and it just never ever works for me. All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thanks everyone who came out. Thanks everyone who followed, everyone who subscribed, everyone who sent in a contribution to the Whiskey and Chocolate Jar. I think the best way for me to calm down after a programming stream will be to dip into that a little bit. Briarstone's going to be streaming in about a couple hours. I think he might still be playing some European Universalis, so look forward to that. And there are some new series that are going to start real soon on the YubTubs, so hopefully we'll... those will be good, and I have to get this edited up so I can hopefully get it over on youtube.com/Quill18Creates as soon as possible. And if you do want to see more programming stuff, head on over there. Thanks for coming out, folks, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. I want to say thank you to everyone who keeps this channel going and all the August Patreon supporters, including these Mic Check supporters: Yukofin, Eric Sumner, Tiburon, Mighty Mix, Pavel Zdanov, Drazion, Michael McClintock, Aaron Toibson, Rarzkal, Tinsy, Jesper Bisgard, Julien Gelafon, Marius Field-Vold, Speedy Savant, Steven Stager, Thomas Oberson, Jason Yanity, Stephen Bonnerman, Kale the Quick, Neil Blakey Milner, and everyone who's watched, shared, favorited, and subscribed to this channel. Thank you so, so much.